What is the craziest real-life plot twist story you have? I was only 5 years old at the time. It was a wedding reception. My parents dragged me along. I think they needed a designated cake eater, and I was very good at eating cake. The room was big. It smelled like flowers and grown-up perfume. Music played softly, the kind that makes you sleepy. I remember shiny shoes and long dresses. Lots of people I did not know. They all seemed very tall. I mostly stayed near the buffet table. That's where the action was for me. The scandal, as I understood it then, was small. Or maybe it was just confusing. The bride looked very young, like one of my older sister's friends. She had a big white dress. It trailed on the floor. The groom, however, looked old, really old. Like my grandpa, but with darker hair. He smiled a lot, but his eyes didn't always smile with his mouth. I noticed that, even at 5. It seemed a bit peculiar, this pairing. Like a cat marrying a much older, slightly tired dog. I remember seeing the bride cry a little, not loud crying, just quiet tears. My mother told me they were happy tears. I didn't really get happy tears back then. Tears meant something was wrong, like when I dropped my ice cream, or when my brother changed the TV channel. This bride, she dabbed her eyes with a tiny lace handkerchief. She looked like a doll. A very pretty, slightly sad doll. The groom patted her hand. It looked like a big paw on a small bird. The rest of the wedding is a blur, a mix of sugary frosting and boring adult conversations. I ate 3 pieces of cake, maybe 4. No one was counting, or if they were, they didn't stop me. The memory of the old groom and the young bride stayed with me, not as a scandal really, more like a puzzle. A strange picture I couldn't quite figure out. It was just one of those odd things grown-ups did, like eating olives, or talking about the news. The wedding hall was quite grand, or at least it seemed grand to a 5-year-old. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling. They sparkled like a pirate's treasure. People were dressed in their fanciest clothes. The men wore suits that looked stiff. The women wore dresses in many colors. I felt small in my own itchy party outfit. My main goal was to avoid being noticed, and to get more of that delicious cake. It had little sugar flowers on it. I liked those the best. The age difference was the talk of the quiet corners. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. Adults would lean in close, they would whisper. Then they would look over at the bride and groom. The bride seemed barely out of her teens. Her smile was bright but looked fragile. The groom, he had lines on his face, around his eyes, around his mouth. He looked like he could be her father, or even her slightly younger, better-dressed grandfather. It was an unusual sight. My 5-year-old brain tried hard to make sense of it all. Why would she marry someone so much older? Maybe he owned a toy store, or a candy factory. That would make sense to me. Kids have simple explanations for complex things. Perhaps she just really liked older gentlemen. I didn't know any girls who liked old men. My sister's friends liked boys with skateboards, not men who looked like they needed a nap after dinner. It was a true mystery. The reception eventually wound down. The music got slower. People started to leave. I clutched a napkin with a piece of cake wrapped in it. A little souvenir from the strange party. The image of the young bride and the old groom stuck, not in a scary way, but in a curious way. The whispers of the adults added to the feeling. Something was not quite standard. Something was a little off-key, like a piano playing a slightly wrong note over and over. Fast forward about 10 years. I was in high school, awkward, a bit taller, still fond of cake. But now I was also trying to be smart, or at least appear smart, so I joined the debate team. It seemed like a good way to argue and get credit for it. Our debate coach was a woman named Mrs. Davison. She was strict but fair. She taught us about logic, and how to speak without saying too much. It was harder than it looked. One day Mrs. Davison was talking about the history of the team. She mentioned the coach who came before her, Mr. Albright. He had left the school rather suddenly, a few years before I even started high school. She didn't say much more, but her tone was a little strange, like she was stepping around a puddle of old forgotten trouble. The way she said his name made my ears perk up. It sounded vaguely familiar, like a song you heard once a long time ago. Then the rumors started, or rather they resurfaced. Older students, the ones who remembered, began to talk. Whispers, just like at that wedding years ago. The story was that Mr. Albright hadn't just left, he was asked to leave, forced out. The reason was serious, very serious for a teacher. It involved a student, an inappropriate relationship they called it, a scandal that the school tried to hush up. But secrets like that rarely stay buried forever, especially in a small town. The details were murky, as school gossip often is. But the core of the story was clear. A teacher, a student, a line crossed, a career ended in disgrace. It was shocking, even to us jaded high schoolers. We thought we knew about drama. But this was next level stuff. It made our own minor rebellion seem like child's play. This was adult failure. Big time. The kind that makes you look at teachers a little differently, with a new kind of caution. The name Mr. Albright kept nagging me. I knew I'd heard it before Mrs. Davison mentioned it. But where? It was like an itch I couldn't quite scratch. Then, someone in the debate club, an older student, found an old school yearbook. From the time Mr. Albright was still teaching. Look, she said, this is him. This is the infamous Mr. Albright. She pointed to a small black and white photo, a man with a forced smile standing with a group of students. I leaned in to look at the picture. The photo quality wasn't great. It was a bit grainy, but the man's face was clear enough. He was younger in the photo. Fewer lines maybe. But the eyes, the set of his jaw, that slightly off smile. My blood ran cold. It was him. Unmistakably him. The groom from that wedding. The old groom. The one who married the very, very young bride. My stomach did a little flip. The kind you get on a roller coaster just before a big drop. Suddenly everything clicked into place. The young bride at the wedding. She wasn't just young, she was likely his student. The age difference wasn't just odd, it was predatory. The unease I felt as a 5-year-old suddenly had a name. A very ugly name. The whispers of the adults at the wedding weren't just about an age gap. They were about something far more sinister. My childhood memory, once a fuzzy puzzle, sharpened into a horrifying picture, a picture of abuse hidden in plain sight. That realization has stuck with me for years. It was a harsh lesson about how adult worlds can be full of dark secrets, secrets that sometimes brush up against a child's innocent world. The wedding wasn't just a strange party with good cake, it was the scene of a quiet tragedy, a prelude to a scandal that would eventually surface. It taught me that sometimes, the things that seem merely off in childhood are actually profoundly wrong, and some happy tears are not happy at all, they are just tears.